How does one person's single mistake end up putting the entire global software economy at risk? Well, that's what we're going to dig into right now. We're dissecting a massive security event that all started with just one click, but it had an impact on foundational software and, well, pretty much countless businesses that depend on it. So what does that kind of domino effect actually look like? 2.6 billion. That is the number of weekly software downloads that were put at risk. It's a scale that's almost impossible to wrap your head around. And every bit of it, started with one person's error.
Yeah, and this quote from the report really it nails it. This wasn't some super hacker finding a secret flaw in a server. No, this is a story about a classic phishing email, a simple human error, and the massive cascading consequences it had across the entire globe.
So, okay, how did this whole thing actually go down? Let's break down this digital heist piece by piece, starting with part 1, the bait.
And you got to appreciate the psychology here. The attackers, they went after a highly respected developer, Josh Junon. They didn't use some brute force attack. They used a perfectly crafted phishing email. It came from a fake domain, npms.help, which, it's designed to look completely official. And here's the hook. They created this false sense of urgency, claiming his two-factor authentication was about to expire. It's really a masterclass in deception.
Okay, and this is where the attack gets really, really clever. A lot of us think an authenticator app makes us bulletproof, but the phishing site they used wasn't just some static page. It was a live proxy. So as the developer entered his username, his password, and that 2FA code into the fake site, it was instantly passing them to the real site in the background and hijacking the live authenticated session. It just goes to show you, even if you think you're doing everything right, a clever enough trap can still get you.
All right, so the bad guys are in. They have full control of a trusted developer's account. So what's next? Well, that brings us to the next stage of the heist. Part 2, weaponization.
So here's the whole playbook, right? It starts with the bait, which we just talked about. That leads directly to the breach. Then comes the critical part, the switch, where they inject their malicious code into all this popular software. And finally, the payload, a silent crypto stealer that gets deployed to thousands of unsuspecting systems. It is just a brutally efficient hijack.
But you know what's really wild? The speed of all this. The first malicious package gets published at 13:16 UTC. But by 15:20, that's less than 2 hours later, the open source community was all over it, detecting the suspicious code and raising the alarm. The response was incredibly fast, but that 2-hour window, that was more than enough time for the damage to start spreading.
And to really get a sense of the blast radius here, you have to look at what they hit. These aren't some obscure packages. We're talking about the absolute bedrock tools, things like ANSI styles and debug, with hundreds of millions of weekly downloads each. They're like the digital nuts and bolts used in countless other applications. Compromising them is like poisoning the water supply for the entire software world.
So we've seen what happened, but now let's talk about the big question. Why does this matter? Because this isn't just some tech issue. This is about a hidden risk that you've probably inherited in your business.
So, the key idea you have to wrap your head around is something called a transitive dependency. Think about it like this. Let's say you're a car maker. You trust your engine supplier, right? But you have no idea who supplies the tiny screws deep inside that engine. If one of those screws is faulty, your entire product line could fail. Well, that's exactly what's happening in software all the time. You inherit the risk from your dependencies, and you might not even know it's there.
And look, you gotta understand, this was not some freak accident. This is the new normal. The data is crystal clear. The number of malicious packages being found in these open source repositories is skyrocketing. We're talking a staggering 156% increase year over year. The software supply chain is officially a primary battleground.
Okay, so after all that chaos, all that risk, how much money do you think the attackers actually made from this specific incident? Get this, $970.
But if you focus on that number, you are missing the entire point. It's a total distraction. This was a near miss, a critical warning shot. No, the real costs were absolutely staggering. Development teams all over the world just ground to a halt. The person-hours spent on cleanup and remediation were a massive, unbudgeted expense. And maybe most important of all, the reputational damage from shipping a compromised product? It can be catastrophic.
All right, so we get the problem. It's huge. It's scary. The question now is, what do we actually do about it? So let's talk about how to build a real framework for resilience to protect your organization from these kinds of threats.
So in this world where everything is connected to everything else, how can you actually protect your business? The answer isn't some single product you can buy or a magic bullet. It's got to be a comprehensive strategy.
Well, the report we're looking at lays out this really powerful three-tiered defense. Tier 1 is all about foundational hygiene. These are the absolute non-negotiable basics you have to get right. Tier 2 is fortifying the process, basically building security into how you work. And Tier 3, which is where this whole story started, is creating a human firewall by investing in your people.
And this is how it all fits together, right? Across these three big pillars: people, process, and technology. For people, it's things like specialized phishing training for your developers. For process, it means having a secure software development lifecycle, which is really just a fancy way of saying you build security checks into every single stage. And for technology, it means mandating things like phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication and using tools like lock files to make sure you're always using the exact vetted versions of your software. Each action leads to a real business outcome, and it turns security from this reactive chore into a proactive advantage.
You know, when you boil it all down, it comes back to this one powerful idea from the report. In today's interconnected world, you don't just ship code, you ship trust. This whole incident wasn't just a technical failure, it was a breach of that trust. And I think the biggest takeaway here is that building resilient, trustworthy software isn't just another feature, it's literally everything.